Miriam Makeba. Zenzile Miriam Makeba, 4th March 1932 to 9th November 2008, nicknamed Mama Africa, was a South African singer, songwriter, actress, and civil rights activist. Associated with musical genres including Afropop, jazz, and world music, she was an advocate against apartheid and white minority government in South Africa. Born in Johannesburg to Swazi and Xhosa parents, Makeba was forced to find employment as a child after the death of her father. She had a brief and allegedly abusive first marriage at the age of 17, gave birth to her only child in 1950, and survived breast cancer. Her vocal talent had been recognized when she was a child, and she began singing professionally in the 50s with the Cuban Brothers, the Manhattan Brothers, and an all-woman group, the Skylarks, performing a mixture of jazz, traditional African melodies, and Western popular music. In 1959, Makeba had a brief role in the apartheid film Come Back Africa, which brought her international attention and led to her performing in Venice, London, and New York. In London, she met the American singer Harry Belafonte, who became a mentor and a colleague. She moved to New York, where she became immediately popular and recorded her first solo album in 1960. Her attempt to return to South Africa that year for her mother's funeral was prevented by the country's government. Makeba's career flourished in the United States, and she released several albums and songs, her most popular being Pata Pata, 1967. Along with Belafonte, she received a Grammy Award for Best Folk Recording for their 1965 album An Evening with Belafonte and Makeba. She testified against the South African government at the United Nations and became involved in the civil rights movement. She married Stokely Carmichael, a leader of the Black Panther Party, in 1968, and consequently lost support among white Americans. Her visa was revoked by the United States government when she was traveling abroad, forcing her and Carmichael to relocate to Guinea. She continued to perform mostly in African countries, including several independence celebrations. She began to write and perform music more explicitly critical of apartheid. In 1977, song Soweto Blues, written by her former husband, Hugh Masekela, was about the Soweto uprising. After apartheid was dismantled in 1990, Makeba returned to South Africa. She continued recording and performing, including a 1991 album with Nina Simone and Dizzy Gillespie, and appeared in the 1992 film Sarafina. She was named a FAO Goodwill Ambassador in 1999 and campaigned for the humanitarian causes. She died of a heart attack during the 2008 concert in Italy. Makeba was the first African musician to receive worldwide recognition. She brought African music to the Western audience and popularized the world music and Afropop genres. Despite her cosmopolitan background, she was frequently viewed by Western audiences as an embodiment of Africa. She was also seen as a style icon in both South Africa and the West. Makeba made popular songs critical of apartheid and became a symbol of opposition to the system, particularly after her right to return was revoked. Upon her death, former South African President Nelson Mandela said that, quote, her music inspired a powerful sense of hope in all of us, end of quote. Childhood and family. Zenzile Miriam Makeba was born on 4th March 1932 in the Black Township of Prospect near Johannesburg. as the only child of her father and the sixth of her mother. Her Xhosa father, Caswell Makeba, was a teacher. He died when she was 6 years old. Her Swazi mother, Christina Makeba, was a domestic worker. She had previously separated from her first husband and had met and married Caswell shortly afterwards. Makeba later said that before she was conceived, her mother had been warned that any future pregnancy could be fatal. Neither Miriam nor her mother seemed likely to survive. After difficult labor and delivery, Miriam's grandmother, who attended the birth, often muttered, "Uzenzile, Uzenzile, Uzenzile," a Xhosa word that means "you brought this on yourself," to Miriam's mother during her recovery, which inspired her to give her daughter the name Zenzile. When Makeba was 18 days old, her mother was arrested and sentenced to a 6-month prison term for selling umkomboti, a homemade beer brewed from malt and cornmeal. The family could not afford the small fine required to avoid jail term, and Miriam spent the next 6 months of her life in jail. By the time of her mother's release from prison, Makeba's father, who had been having difficulty finding work as a teacher, had obtained a job as a clerk at the Shell Oil Company in Nelspruit, now Bombela, and the family moved along with him accordingly. After her father's death, she moved to the house of her maternal grandmother in Riverside Township outside Pretoria, along with her siblings and cousins, while her mother worked for white families in Johannesburg to support the family. As a child, Makeba sang in the choir in the Kilnerton Training Institute in Pretoria, an all-black Methodist primary school that she attended for 8 years. Her talent for singing earned her praise at school. Makeba was baptized a Protestant and sang in church choirs in English, Xhosa, Sotho, and Zulu. She later said that she learned to sing in English before she could speak the language. Makeba was influenced by her family's musical tastes. Her mother played several traditional instruments, and her elder brother collected records, including those of Duke Ellington and Ella Fitzgerald, and taught Makeba songs. Her father played the piano and sang in a group called the Mississippi 12, and his musical inclination was later a factor in Makeba's family accepting what was seen as a risky choice of career. Makeba left school to support her family and first worked as a live-in nanny to a Greek family in the Johannesburg suburb of Waverley for 3 months. The mother stopped paying for her and went to the police to accuse her of stealing, so Makeba fled back to the grandmother's home in Riverside. Around that time, Makeba's mother began the process of becoming a sangoma, or a traditional healer, which required her to go back to her ancestral homeland in Eswatini, then Swaziland. Makeba stayed behind working as a launderer for expatriate workers to support her family. In 1949, Makeba married James Kubei, a policeman in training with whom she had her only child, Sibongile, or Bongi, Makeba, in 1950. Makeba was then diagnosed with breast cancer, and her husband, who was said to have beaten her, left her shortly afterwards. After a 2-year marriage, a decade later, she overcame cervical cancer via hysterectomy. Early career. Makeba began her professional musical career with the Cuban Brothers, a South African all-male close harmony group with whom she sang covers of popular American songs. Soon afterwards, at the age of 21, she joined a jazz group, the Manhattan Brothers, who sang a mixture of South African songs and pieces from popular African American groups. Makeba was the only woman in the group. With the Manhattan Brothers, she recorded her first hit, Lakutshilanga, in 1953 and developed a national reputation as a musician. In 1956, she joined an all-new woman group, the Skylarks, singing a blend of jazz and traditional South African melodies, formed by Galoton Records. The music was known as the Sunbeams. Makeba sang with the Skylarks when the Manhattan Brothers were traveling abroad. Later, she also traveled with the Manhattan Brothers in the Skylarks. Makeba sang alongside Rhodesian-born musician Dorothy Masuka, whose music Makeba followed along with that of Dolly Radebe. Several of the Skylarks pieces from this period became popular. The music historian Rob Allingham later described the group as real trendsetters with harmonization that has never been heard before. Makeba received no royalties for her work with the Skylarks. While performing with the Manhattan Brothers in 1955, Makeba met Nelson Mandela, then a young lawyer. He later remembered the meeting and that he felt that the girl he met was going to be someone. With the Manhattan Brothers, Makeba recorded Lakushona Ilanga, written by Mackay Davashe. The song's popularity prompted requests for an English version, and in 1956, Galoton Records released Lovely Lies, Makeba's first solo success and first recording in English. However, the Hosa lyric about a man looking for his beloved in jails and hospitals was replaced with the unrelated and innocuous line, you tell such lovely lies with your two lovely eyes, in the English version. The piece became the first South African record to chart on the United States Billboard Top 100. In 1957, Makeba was featured on the cover of Drum magazine. In 1959, Makeba sang the lead female role in the Broadway-inspired South African jazz opera King Kong. Among those in the cast was the musician Hugh Masekela.